Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Here we are, November 18th, and I have the absolute pleasure to be sitting here with Linda A. Janssen, the author of The Emotionally Resilient Expat. Linda's book was recently published, and all of us here, talking about inspiring global entrepreneurs, our recent book, all of us as expats really should pick up a copy of this book. We'll be talking a lot more about it throughout the morning. But firstly, as I welcome Linda, and let me welcome everyone who's watching this morning, this week marks Global Entrepreneurship Week. And not only is it Global Entrepreneurship Week across the world, but in America, President Obama has made November National Entrepreneur Month. And we're here to celebrate the release of Inspiring Global Entrepreneurs, the book that Megan Peterson Fenn and I have just completed, and also to celebrate the release of Linda's book, The Emotionally Resilient Expat, Engage, Adapt, and Thrive Across Cultures, and really celebrating the entrepreneurial spirit that is embodied in not only all of Linda's efforts and all the work that she does, but in everyone who will be watching this video today and all of the entrepreneurs, expat and otherwise, around the world. So a real pleasure to be with you this morning, Linda.
Oh, thank you, Heidi. I really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to having a conversation, rather than an interview, a real conversation about entrepreneurship, and especially in terms of expat life, living cross-culturally, and emotional resilience as well. Thanks.
Well, thank you. And let me just give a bit of a background to everyone who may not be familiar with the work that you've been doing. I mean, Linda is not only is she a published author with The Emotionally Resilient Expat, she was also a contributing author to another fantastic book that we're going to talk about this morning called Turning Points. And Turning Points is 25 inspiring stories from women entrepreneurs who've turned their careers and their lives around. And Megan and I were so pleased that Linda agreed to have a conversation with us this morning, because for us, the launch of Inspiring Global Entrepreneurs and actually having the book in print, as Linda, a published author herself, will know, really marks its own turning point in the process and all of the things that come from that. And so we're going to talk a bit about turning points as well as the Emotionally Resilient Expat today and Linda's own experiences. And let me just introduce Linda to you. As I mentioned, Linda is the author of The Emotionally Resilient Expat. She was a contributing author to Turning Points, as well as a contributing author to another book called Forced to Fly, by Joe Parfit, about humorous stories about life in expat land. And Linda's also been on the forefront of really the expat blogging world with her own personal blog called Adventures in Expat Land. And she's also been a contributing writer and blogger to many other forums, usually dealing with life as an expat abroad.
Right.
But prior to Linda's writing career taking off and her really following her passion, Linda experienced a turning point of her own. And we'll talk about that. But what I wanted to let people know about is Linda's professional life beforehand, which could be an interview in and of itself. And it's so impressive. And Linda was, prior to becoming an expat 5 years ago, she held senior level positions, working with the U.S. Department of Defense, the U.S. Department of the Navy. She was working at RTI International, located right here in the Triangle area, and has been really working on anti-terrorism work, all of the things that have been at the forefront of the news for so many of us around the world since 9/11. And 9/11 really was a turning point for Linda in that she was in the Pentagon on 9/11. And so no doubt that will come into our story about really the life changes that Linda has made since that time, that we all can now benefit from. In addition to all of those things that Linda is doing all of the time as an author, she is also married, and she has 2 children who's really spent their formative young adult years as young teens growing up in The Hague in the Netherlands. And they are all now back here in the United States in high school and college, and really getting to grips with repatriation, which Linda writes a lot about. So an extremely esteemed career and background that just continues to go strength to strength. So there's so many areas that we can touch on with Linda. So why don't we get started, Linda, and just jump right into the inspiration for you for writing the Emotionally Resilient Expat in the first place?
Oh, I think, that's a good question because this really was a labor of love. A lot of labor, a lot of love. But it really, when I had as you mentioned, I had a very internationally oriented career prior to our moving overseas. And my husband is an adult third culture kid. He grew up, he's American, but grew up his formative years in Italy. And and we both have come from an international arena or an international focus in our work. And but when you actually live overseas and you're living cross culturally, things were so busy. He went on ahead. I was trying to deal with getting the family over there, the house sold, all of that. So I didn't really have a lot of time or energy to do a lot of research on living as opposed to traveling or working. I'd done a fair amount of work-related travel overseas and a lot of personal travel. But actually, when you're there for months and years on end, how does living cross-culturally really present itself? And so, here we were, a family of four, and we were going through all of these changes and adjustments and challenges, as well as opportunities and really wonderful experiences.
Sure.
And I was fortunate in that my children attended an international school, that American School of The Hague, that is at the forefront of helping to get the word out and provide people with information and tools about living the expatriate or cross-cultural life. And so as I was learning about culture shock and transition stages and identity issues and feelings of home and belonging, it just caused me to then go out and read more and read more. I wanted to learn more and more. And as I did, it helped us. But I just would hear stories from more seasoned expats about challenges that they had, problems, or situations that people that they knew, friends, loved ones, had experienced. And what I found was that there's a wonderful book written by Julia Simmons, Emotional Resilience in the Expat Child, which focuses on much younger children, probably in the 4 to 12 range. Excellent book. And it really inspired me. I really wanted to sort of, I just felt like in giving back, by pulling it all together and saying that, look, emotional resilience we all need emotional resilience.
Yeah.
And emotional resilience is the psychological ability to deal with the setbacks, the misfortunes, the turmoil, the strife that life presents us. And it can range from the irritating to the very devastating. And then, and I think this is really important, it's to deal with it, however long that may take, and come back to a place where you can still feel good about yourself again. And I just felt that the book that pulled it all together and spoke to it in terms of emotional resilience for the entire family and needed to be written. And so that triggered it, and it became an obsession. It really did, and that's how it came to be.
Well, I mean, I just thank you so much because, I was an expat for 18 years. And, it never dawned on me that the emotional resilience side was something that I really had not given myself credit for having at the times when I had it,
Hmm.
and two, realized that I actually needed to work on it
Yeah.
when I repatriated more than when I was abroad. And
Right.
when your book came out, just the perfect time, and as you know, we both connected here personally over lunch since we're just down the road. But it's almost that when you've put to words things that, for me, and I'm sure many others out there, just almost didn't even know that we needed to be working on. That something was missing out there in the genre. And I agree with you a lot. I've done a lot of reading myself on the emotional resilience, but always related to children.
Hmm.
And I hadn't really been applying it to myself. And I think it says something that I'm a life coach and I work with people on change and whatnot. And yet, when your book, your book just put into words so many of the things that I myself had been feeling. And I just think it just really adds so much and is such a fabulous resource for all of us out there, especially people in the entrepreneurship world,
Hmm.
who are not that they're experiencing additional challenges to the expat life, but anytime that you're working and running your own business, there are quite a lot of additional things to cope with, and you don't have the 2 weeks vacation or 3 weeks vacation to maybe recruit because you just haven't
Right.
built that into your time. So for me, it really was a very important book that came out for me at the perfect time. So thank you for
Yeah.
following your obsession and the passion and adding to the discussion for adults.
I think you're absolutely right. Everyone, regardless of age, whether you grow up and live your entire life in one place, or you move across country constantly, or you end up moving abroad or living cross culturally. Everyone needs emotional resilience. And I think that actually, I think anyone who is an entrepreneur where you don't have behind you the structure and the resources and the systems in place from working for a company or an organization, that you do need resilience
Yeah,
from
yeah.
on the business side of things. And I think when you add the global aspect to it, living across culture adds a a it's an overlay of cultural issues and challenges that there are great opportunities, but challenges and some difficulties that do need to be addressed, and that's really that's what I'm trying to get at with the book and share it with it. But I think the thing that I really like to tell people is that to me the strength of the book, the best part of the book, are the dozens and dozens and dozens of stories, very personal stories, positive and some not so positive, about difficult times of persevering through, having the tenacity to address things, how losing resilience and then how to get it back, strengthening it, enhancing emotional resilience, from so many people who are current or former expats or have lived across cultures and around the globe. And that to me is the strength of the book, because and when writing it, it gave me those stories. Would come in at a time when I just opened my inbox, and there would be this heartfelt story that just gave me, just warmed my heart. It just really, would spur me on to, oh, I've got to get this out, because, people need to read this. People need to know they're not alone, and that there are ways to deal with it, and to enhance and strengthen your emotional resilience. And so I think the stories really do strengthen it and make it the book that it is.
Well, I agree, and although I will have to say that actually what I really think does offer the steps that you offer to people to actually
Mhm.
grow their emotional resilience, that it's not a stagnant
Right.
characteristic, that it is something that you can work on, and that you have put together with factors that you have created, and I'm just going to hold this up so people can see, and we're just going to jump around here a little bit from where we were originally going. But you know, when I read through this book, and as Linda will know, I had recently had a medical diagnosis that was the result of me having not gone to the doctor for 4 years of expat life. But I'd taken my children to many appointments. And reading Linda's book made me realize that actually there were quite a lot of things about day-to-day life that I had been ignoring. But I've been setting up my business, and I'd been out there marketing myself, and I had found a hairdresser, but I hadn't found a doctor. And I realized I'd neglected a lot of things. And so with factors that Linda has created, and you need to get the book so that you can actually read about this and work on your emotional resilience, because it is something that you can develop. But family, awareness, communication, transitions, optimism, rituals, significance, and something bigger than ourselves, or significance / something bigger than ourselves. And I think that this is extremely interesting from an expat entrepreneur point of view as well, in that expat entrepreneurs often are, they seem very comfortable in the environment where they're in, not to say they don't have challenges. But one of the things that they do have that I think really does help them handle the expat life and the things that come with it is that element of significance. Through creating a business, through finding something that they call their own, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're, that then family, awareness, communication, transitions, optimism, and rituals are all 100% down pat. But it really struck me when I was reading that the significance and something bigger than ourselves is one element that expat entrepreneurs really do have in their toolbox to handle the emotional, really grow their emotional resilience.
Significance can be both on a very personal, emotional level, whether it's faith or spirituality, a sense of order, something bigger than ourselves, that from that very personal level. But I think you're right. Significance, when as an entrepreneur, you're building something, and whether it is a small business, whether it's a consultancy or a coaching or some sort of whether you're providing a product or a service or both, whatever it is, you have that vision, and you're going to encounter challenges along the way, difficulties and problems, and things are going to go wrong, and there's going to be screw ups, and so you've got to have the vision, the desire, and the ability to kind of roll with the punches, solve problems, try to avoid them wherever possible, and not lose sight of what you're trying to do, so that you can build toward what you want to do in your career. So I think that it works on a personal, but very much so on a professional level.
So yes,
or even not even for entrepreneurs, but especially entrepreneurs, I believe. Yes.
So I agree. I loved all of the stories and found them so comforting. I was like, oh, good. I'm glad I'm not alone and the only person who doesn't want to unpack any boxes anymore. One of the stories in particular. And but what I really loved, and I felt the real value comes so much from the steps that you give people that you have created to allow them to continue building that emotional resilience. That really is. It's no small feat, the work that has gone into really the roadmap that you've created for people.
Well, what I did is it's, people will say, oh, what chapter is it all in? And it's woven throughout the book.
Yes.
And I did that deliberately because I think that the idea is that what I was trying to pull together is that the idea that emotional resilience as a concept is made up of many different actions, tips, techniques, tools. And so I turn toward emotional and social intelligence, which is emotional intelligence being where in understanding ourselves and how we're feeling and our emotions, it can have an impact on how we act, how we present ourselves, how we interact with others. And then social intelligence is being able to read other people's emotions and their actions, and have a better understanding of what's motivating them, and especially in cross-cultural situations, so that the interactions between us are enhanced, and that we don't make assumptions or misassumptions about interactions. And then pulling in cultural intelligence, and sort of and in a related, which is part of and related to intercultural competence. How you're interacting in a different culture. And it goes well beyond like a to-do list of do's and don'ts in a given culture. Although that information is very important, but I think it's getting to the broader understanding of how cultures differ, and rather than labeling different nationalities, this group does this and this people from this country act like that. It's looking at the cultures behind them and how these cultures are similar and how they differ, so that you have a sense of how you're raised is not the only way. The culture in which you're raised is not the only form of culture and out there. The differences are there, and you need to learn to respect them and hopefully to understand them, so that you can operate within a different culture or country, and across cultures. And so I think that's really important. But also pulling in what I wanted to do is I wasn't seeing within the expat literature, I wasn't seeing anything that looked toward mind-body connections, brain-body connections. And there's been so much going on in terms of positive psychology and neuroscience and understanding the connections. Anything from the endorphins and neurotransmitters that are released in our body that make us feel good, and how here's an example. When you move overseas, and you don't know anybody, you wake up and you look around, and you may be by yourself, you may be even within your family, if you're an accompanying partner, or whether you're actually going over and working somewhere else, you're going for your own job, but at the end of the day, you're coming home to a place, a dwelling that is not yet home, and you don't know people. All your background, your professional background, your personal background, your accomplishments, how you've contributed within a community, your friends, your family, all those things that are part of that help make up your identity and who you are no longer there. Or they're still within you, but they don't exist around you, and no one has those reference points. So, so one of the things that is so important, and you always hear it, is whether it's have a colleague asking you to go get a coffee or tea, or meeting a neighbor for coffee or tea, or going to the school sponsored coffee or tea. Because when you go overseas, you realize how important these social events are.
Oh, yes.
But there's we say go to them. Well, you'll have introverts say, well, I don't like going to these sort of things, or I don't want to associate with, I don't want to spend my time at the school, or I don't, I'm looking for work, or I want to build a business, or whatever it is you're doing. But the point is, it's the social interactions it gives you something to look forward to. It helps you learn more about the culture in which and country in which you're living. You end up meeting people who, look, they're not going to be your best friend on day one. They may not be your business partner on day one, but you start to meet people. And so you start to build a network of connections with people that, if you run into a problem or you're not sure how to do something, you don't know how to queue in line, or do bank payments or whatever it is, because everything's new and different and
Yes.
often in another language. And so you build those connections so that, there are people that you can send a quick text or email or pick up the phone and call. You can go down 2 doors down and knock and ask your neighbor, or you run into them on the street and hey, I've got a question for you. Those are important, but you have a sense of accomplishment when you have gone, even if you didn't enjoy whatever the program was or whatever it was. If you went to an event that it isn't so much whether you're enjoying that, it's that you're getting out there and that you're operating within the new culture. And so for entrepreneurs, it's not just operating in the new culture, but the new business culture. And I think that's really important. I do that. And I think that's where, books such as yours really come in, because they talk to taking all of your strengths, your skills, your accomplishments, your education, your experiences, your abilities, your capabilities, all of it, and then bringing it to bear in a cross-cultural setting to create the work that you want to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important. And emotional resilience is important.
Oh, so much so. And I just, similar to what you said about the stories and the contributors to the Emotionally Resilient Expat, I love reading the stories of the contributors for Inspiring Global Entrepreneurs in the same way, and was reading them interviewing the people while I myself was trying to get my business going here, and they gave me so much strength. And even as I edited them, I could continue enjoying them and getting something from each of the stories. So I hear you on that in terms of the strength of just others sharing. And that is all what helps to make a community, whether it's a virtual community or one right on our doorstep, And as you talk about, that sense of community is so important from an emotionally resilience point of view.
I also think that not only is globalization increasing, and so the likelihood of people interacting cross-culturally is growing. But on top of it, technology and developments, ranging from the internet and social media to software developments, it is so easy to be interconnected and to do work globally. And, I think about how I don't think twice about Skyping. Well, right now, we could have gotten together in the same room, but, even that we're just down the road, but I can have a Skype conversation with you the same way I could Skype with my publisher or editor, whether they were in the Netherlands or my publisher's now in Malaysia, other colleagues or friends in different countries, in fact, I just had one last week with someone in Canada, and next week it's going to be with someone to talk about some volunteering efforts for the Families in Global Transition Conference.
Oh, wow, wonderful.
And that person is in Vienna. So it doesn't, and you learn to calculate the time differences and just set it up, and then you go. And you can get a lot of work done that way. And I think we're on this threshold of just the age of globalization, and it's just booming. And the beauty is that the tools are there to help us develop as entrepreneurs. And I look back, when you were introducing me, I really do think of that as an entirely different life. Everything I did, everything I learned, everything I experienced, I bring with me. But at this point, over the last few years, I cannot imagine. I just can't imagine at this point going back and working for other people or organization. I want to work with people. I want to work with organizations. I want to work with individuals. But I am continuing as a writer and an author, working on the next book in the series, but also I'm continuing with developing a second aspect of my career, which is in consulting and speaking engagements and some training in my niche areas. And so I can't envision at this point not remaining globally connected and globally inspired. And so I think that, and that's where your book was so, I'm reading that, I've read that, and I'm flipping through and I'm looking at that, and I'm, as I'm doing my career changes, we're constantly making adjustments, and and I think that's the beauty of it, is that it's all there, the technology, the connectivity, the social media, the ability to be interconnected and to interact, and to build the kind of work and businesses that we want to have. It's just a great time. It's a golden opportunity right now, and I think your book really helps people think more broadly than simply feeling stuck perhaps in a new country where they don't know anybody. They may not speak the language. They don't understand the social or business professional customs. Their credentials may not be considered in the same or respected in the same manner as they're used to, and they feel like they got to start over. And I don't think they do have to start over. I think they can decide what they want to do. And a lot of expats or people living cross culturally decide that they want to build on what they've done, and they may have to go approach it from a different perspective to get to where they want to be. Others, and I put myself in that arena, used it as an opportunity to segue into something new. And that's why your book is so important. It's a nice handbook, but the inspiring in the title gives the encouragement. And I think when people do get connected and see connected, in a community level, whatever country you're in, and within a country, but also within a region and within globally, I mean, the strength that you can take from that, and the power of what you can do, and and the network that you can build to rely on when you have a question. Gee, I haven't done this before. I don't know this about taxes in this country. Who do I talk to? I don't know about, where do I find somebody who can help me with, provide this service, for me, or whatever it is, so that you can get your product or service out, and help you build what you're trying to build. So.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for that. And it brings me to the point of the job title of yours that I love the most, which is as a global cultural and resilience community builder. And you have that on your LinkedIn profile. And when I saw that, I thought, oh my God, I just love it. And it is so true, and it does speak to all of the strengths. And just to imagine that never having had the opportunity to be, had you not really had that turning point that you had in 2001. But more, what I think is so fascinating about it, and what I loved about the book Turning Points, that you are a contributing author to, and we also tried to do something similar with Inspiring Global Entrepreneurs, is that in the Turning Points book, Kate Cobb and the others, and you as and the other contributing authors, all focused on what you could narrow down to maybe kind of really one really significant moment where the wheels started to turn differently and you started to think differently about what would I like to do. But if we think about that from 2001 to today, 2013, or even the day when you were able to when that title, Global Cultural and Resilience Community Builder, materialized in your mind, because I know that it's a process and it doesn't happen just overnight. The time that took, and the fact that that book focused on the turning points and the significance of those, and we so often only look at those in hindsight. And what we try to do with Inspiring Global Entrepreneurs, the bit that we didn't feel was really written about enough, is about overcoming the fear to take those steps. And we wanted to ask everyone to be open and vulnerable and share how they overcame the fear with us. Because I think when people are looking from the outside, and someone might be looking at this interview today and saying, oh, look at that, Linda published a book, and look, she does all of these things, and she's moved, and she's done all this, and look at what Heidi's done and all this, and not have any idea of the stuff in between. And the fact that it doesn't happen overnight. And I love that Turning Points really focused on that, and just the time. Really when you look back on it, the time and each of those little steps that you took that have led to where you are now today.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. I think, yes, for me, it's only in recent years that I've started to talk more about September 11th and to write about it. And I'm very cautious about what I do, because for me it's I recognize it's a very symbolic. It was a symbolic series of events, and I'm sensitive to that. But it's also it's like anything. It's made up of personal stories and so it for me it was my turning point in that I was enjoying a very wonderful career in working in defense policy in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, and in particular I was in a new endeavor of working in the combating terrorism arena, and specifically helping to set up an office which now is referred to as Homeland Security within Homeland Defense within the Department of Defense. But at the time we were starting to build that, and dealing with terrorist events such as what ended up occurring, and it took place, and everyone knows where they were on that day, and all, and even now I can appreciate it from the cross-cultural perspective. And so it has the added layers of meaning and perspective, and I lost former colleagues in that, and lost our offices were destroyed. We were fortunate in the meeting we were in, which was it was to go and prepare senior level interagency officials to come together on a secure Skype-like system at the time, to start dealing with what was going on when the plane hit the building. There's a lot of things that what I remember is people pulling together and working very hard and all. But it, and that was my life for the next 4 years,
Yeah.
3 years, 3.5 years. But I think what it did is it proved to me more than anything, the old adage that, life is short. And, when you appreciate the fact that, you were spared, and that you honor the people that weren't by living life to the fullest and doing what really is most meaningful to you and what are your real priorities. And for me, over time, slowly, I couldn't walk away from it because I felt needed and a part of something that needed to be, dealing with the issues and dealing with the policy and all. But it did plant the seed that, okay, what is it, that you really want to be doing? And that started to put everything into motion. And that, the answer is I like to engage people through words and through experiences and face to face as well. And that, I used to get, I'm very used to doing speaking engagements. I would do a lot of presentations. I do a lot of speaking events, and cross-culturally too, to visiting dignitaries and groups from other countries and all. I'm very used to doing that, but now it's, I've over the years, now it's doing it to different audiences. But I think it's engaging people through words and not only on the nonfiction side, but I also write on the small short stories, and I'm working on a novel on the fiction side of it. And so it's been a long journey, but the point is that you just, as an entrepreneur, you do step by step by step, and you just keep plugging away at it. And sometimes they're very big changes, and sometimes they're just sort of incremental, but they do add up.
Yes, yes. I love that. That really came through to me in our interviews with people and then even just through your story, that it's those small incremental steps. Each step that you take, one step forward, the next thing you know, it's 20 steps forward as you look back on it. And each one of those continues to build. And it's not just this finished picture that people say, oh, they're an entrepreneur, how did they get there? It is a process and a choice that you make many times along the way. Yeah. And without each of those small steps, it simply does not happen.
Well, I think that's exactly it. I think, when you decide whatever it is you want to do, whatever business you want to build, whatever it is that you want to share with the world, the first step is the commitment. And you commit to that, to yourself, and also to others, and then it's a lot of hard work, and there are a lot of, as we said, there's big steps, huge strides, and then there's also all the little incremental steps. But whether you do. Whether you look at your day or your week and you think, you're always going to have the list of things to do, and it's always going to be overwhelming. But if you're committed to what you want to do, what meaning you want to have, what's of significance that you want to build or offer, then you'll keep plugging away at it. And, some days or some weeks or some months, you may get 1 or 2 or 3 things done. And other times, you'll be working on something really big and it's got a lot of moving parts, and then it all comes together. But I am a big fan of periodically taking stock and stopping. And while you've got to be looking forward in order to build and take the steps forward, I really think you have to take the time to look back periodically. So every few months, just stop. And whether it's learning a new language or whatever it is, you stop and you look back and you realize, okay, over the last 3 months, I've done X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether they're small or they're, enormous. You've made enormous progress. It doesn't matter. It's like in learning a language. If you only focus on the fact that you're not proficient, you're not fluent, and it's very difficult. You don't know the vocabulary, and you can't speak too quickly, and you can't always understand what you hear. If that's all, if that's what you focus on, you're not going to go far. But if you look back and say, wow, in the last month, I learned these words, and I used these words, and I interacted with somebody, these people, and all, then you celebrate your accomplishments. And I think you really need to do that, and I think entrepreneurs really need to do that, to keep, and that's what gives you the inspiration to keep going and the encouragement to keep going.
Oh my gosh.
And see, that's where, to me, in the field of positive psychology, the concept of optimism is not just sort of painting a rosy picture and pretending everything's great when it's not, but it's a sense of encouragement and hopefulness, and it's very action oriented, and it's very future oriented. Thinking about where you want to be, visualizing it, sharing it with others, writing about it, whatever it is. It's getting that in your mind and then working toward that. And so optimism in positive psychology, are, to me, are tools or there are techniques associated with them for emotional resilience that will help any entrepreneur, and especially one working cross-culturally or internationally.
No, I agree. One of the things we built into the book, Inspiring Global Entrepreneurs, was this reflection piece. It's something that I do as part of my life coaching, and something that when I made my own turning point from HR director to entrepreneur, I only was able to make it because I built in some reflection time to really say, what is it I wanted to do? Who am I? What was I put here for? And have continued to do that each month. And we're so great, I think, at living in the now, funnily enough, that we don't make enough time for that reflection and to really congratulate ourselves and celebrate each of those small milestones. I know for me, when I was living in China, whenever I would meet someone new who had just arrived, it was always a great way to remind myself of how far I had come.
Right, exactly.
Because you're like, oh my gosh, yes, let me share all of the things that I know with you, and how to say left and right in the taxi. And, those were kind of little reflection moments to say, oh, wow, look, I have learned so much.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, and I think so, that and recognizing that it's important to offer that assistance to others along the way, because whatever, and whether it's on a professional level or a personal level, a social level, I think what you give out, you get back many times over, and so that if you're open and giving in how you interact with other people, you're going to get it back so many times over.
Yes, yeah, no, definitely. All part of that community, the community piece as well. So, Linda, we have been talking about so many things, and oh my gosh, we could, again, there's so many that we so many different things that we share in common that we know we love to just chat and to catch up, and I've so enjoyed our morning. One question I just wanted to end on before we wrap up today is, really, for you, looking back on your expat experience, what role have expat entrepreneurs had on your experience, both while living and traveling abroad, and maybe perhaps also while you've repatriated? Is there any expat entrepreneur that really stands out to you or that's made a difference on your journey?
Well, I in thinking about, that's a great question. I find that um, there are so many people. What I found over time in the Netherlands was that the people I interacted with, a lot of Dutch people as well as expats and internationals there, and I really wanted to be part of the broader community and not, apart in a little. It wasn't necessary to live in an expat compound for security purposes, and so we lived on a Dutch street and all, and it's a very international. We were in The Hague, and it's a very international city, but it's interesting when I think about the people that I tended to spend time with, my friends, neighbors, other expats, Dutch people, the projects I would get involved with. I would say the majority, men and women, that I interacted with were entrepreneurs.
Wow.
And, and that's not to say, obviously my husband was going off every day to work at an international organization. He was there with the UN. And, and I was fortunate in that I had the ability I had permission to work in the Netherlands, but like any place, what you want to do and what they're looking for and what they're assuming in terms of the number and ability to speak languages and the kind of work that you want to be doing. It didn't. In my case, I was allowed to work there, but I didn't really find anything that I wanted to do and all. So I find that even in repatriating, the people that I interact with the most are entrepreneurs.
And very interesting.
And I see that in the writing. I see that so much in the writing world, in terms of dealing with, I'm working now, my Joe Parfit of Summertime Publishing, which is published the first book and will publish, I'm working with her on continuing to work with her on the next book and what's going to be a short series to continue the Emotional Resilient series. My editor, she's she's an entrepreneurial editor, and that's her business. The person I worked with and will continue to work with, who is the book cover and interior layout designer. Some of the people I continue to work with them on a regular basis, but also even on in my fiction writing. Well, I mean, as well in the nonfiction side, on articles I do, or if I do an article for an online or a print publication, a lot, some of them are, the folks I'm interacting with are certainly working for a company or an organization. Others it's very entrepreneurial. And then, but and even on the fiction side, you're finding small publications, or editors, working with editors, whether it's for an online journal or it's a small fiction imprint. They started as, publishing in the U.S. and around the world has just, gotten turned on its head over the last 15 years. And so, people can self-publish, do ebooks, whatever it is. And so the growth of, it's not just the golden age of globalization, but I think of entrepreneurial spirit. And people have realized that they can do work that is not location dependent. It's location independent. and you can be doing what really is what you're passionate about, what you're interested in, what you feel you're meant to do, and you can take it with you. So wherever we're here now for this will be our home base, but even in going overseas again, going to take it with us, and so we'll take our work with us. So, I think, and so when you put it, looking back, 10 years, 20 years, I didn't necessarily know that this was where I was going, but then one day the seed is there,
yeah.
and then it keeps evolving, and then and you realize the freedom you have to grow and develop the skills you need to do what you really want to be doing, or what you feel you're meant to do.
Yes, yes.
So, and I'm amazed at how constantly interacting with entrepreneurs.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful, and thank you for being one of the entrepreneurs who's helped make my sense of community start to feel complete now that I'm back here in the U.S. And Linda, on that note, let me just say to everyone watching today, The Emotionally Resilient Expat. This is a book that I really feel not only that all expats need, but that I really feel that expat entrepreneurs really need to give to themselves as a gift, because I think we really can put ourselves second after all of the other things that always come first when you're running a small business. And so thank you so much for following your passion, for making it your obsession, and really, in addition to repatriating at the same time, for releasing and having your book published. So it's been a real honor, and it's really been a real companion to me on my own expat journey. So I thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Heidi. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we did have this more of a conversation, and I want to thank you also, not only for your kind words about the Emotionally Resilient Expat, but more importantly, for you and Megan writing your book. And I know that it's going to be a very, very, very well received, very, very great launch, very, very successful. And I've read the book. I can highly recommend it, and I'm just pleased that it's coming out into the world, and that others will get to have the benefits of what you have put together there.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Contributing to entrepreneurial spirit. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inspiring us on the way, Linda.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.